biased. I believe that Jesus is who he claimed to be. I believe he rose from the dead, so yes, I'm biased toward the Christian message. You're biased toward the Muslim message.
So, Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything. I just want to get your ideas because you're a scholar. And here is a book, Acts and Christian Beginnings, from the Acts Seminar. Are you familiar with this book by Dennis Smith and Joseph Tyson?
I am not.
Okay. Then I would recommend that you get a copy and read it. Why? Because you rely on the age-old convention that Luke was a companion of Paul and that he wrote probably around 85, even as I put up there on the screen.
Which is the view of the majority of scholars.
Yes. Now there is an emerging group of scholars. This is the result of 10 years of study by the people we know as the Jesus Seminar. Now they're the Acts Seminar. Over 10 years to study Acts of the Apostles. And their conclusion is that Acts of the Apostles is not written by a traveling companion of Paul, but was written probably around the year 115. And this answers a lot of the puzzles that previously struck us, because we know that there are discrepancies between Paul's statements, for example, in Galatians, and what is actually found in Acts. And you've alluded to that in your book as well. So this solves the problem, and what they're saying is that Acts of the Apostles was written by somebody who wanted to rehabilitate Paul. Why? Because in the first part of the 2nd century, Marcion was using Paul's writings to champion a particular brand of Christianity which did not become mainstream. And Acts of the Apostles wanted to bring the writings of Paul and Paul's character himself into the mainstream. And so Acts of the Apostles shows, yes, that when Paul comes to Jerusalem, the disciples meet him, there is some hesitation, but eventually they're getting along. Though not extremely quite well, but you can see that they're getting along. So I think you need to now take into consideration that the support that you thought that Paul had in Acts of the Apostles may not be so very strong, because Acts of the Apostles itself is not an unbiased source, but thoroughly biased towards Paul.
Okay, well, first of all, bias doesn't mean you're wrong. If that were the case, then African-American historians could never write on slavery in the U.S. A Jewish historian could never write on the Holocaust. Okay, so bias doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that you were there for a cause. And if Jesus was who he claimed to be, and he rose from the dead, well, then the disciples, yes, they're biased about the message, but rightly so. I'm biased. I believe that Jesus is who he claimed to be. I believe he rose from the dead, so yes, I'm biased toward the Christian message. You're biased toward the Muslim message. That doesn't mean that either of us are wrong because we're biased. In terms of the book there, written by the Jesus Seminar, nobody pays much attention to them anymore. They were very popular in the 90s and the early 2000s, but they are a group of scholars on the radical left. There was about 150 of them that signed up for it in the whole history of the Jesus Seminar. Many of them are dead, so it's less than that now. Many of the Jesus Seminar fellows deny the existence of God. If you want to say that they're unbiased scholars, well, that's a far cry. John Dominic Crossan is an atheist. Stephen Patterson, another prominent fellow, doesn't believe that God exists in any sense like the Muslim, Christian, Abrahamic God. If God exists at all, he's just a force, an impersonal force. And when we die, there's no afterlife. If so, it's more like we're absorbed into the universe. So their views are quite a bit different than ours, a lot of the Jesus Seminar fellows. I'm going to rely more on, and by the way, there's usually no more than 30 or 40 of them, according to what Stephen Patterson told me, who even vote on these things. So it's not even that much of an emergent number of scholars. It's a radical group of scholars on the way out there on the fringe of the theological left and not in touch with mainstream scholarship. If you want to know what mainstream scholarship is on Acts, I'd encourage you to read Craig Keener's seminal 4-volume work on commentary on the book of Acts, which is over 5,000 pages. 624 pages itself, just devoted to the introduction of Acts. And there he talks about where the majority of scholars are today. And he says the majority of scholars do hold that Luke, the author of Acts, was a traveling companion of Paul.